In sum, what are all these examples that I'm showing you showing? What am I trying to show? That the capacity for social justice in students, in teachers, in everyone is not an add-on, a luxury, a choice. It is an indispensable tool to just do our job well. So we want to create meaningful learning environments for our students, and we want to positively influence the lives of our students. But it is not enough to do it through a technocratic approach to teaching. Knowing the what of teaching, knowing the how of teaching, we need to know the why of teaching, and we need to know the why of teaching and learning of our students, not just in the individual kind of perspective, but also in the perspective of the dynamic forces of oppression that affect all language learners. So how can we move forward? This is very interesting to me. We know that some teachers naturally develop critical awareness of social justice and become political, but some don't. And we don't know so well why. And there is a new construct that I encountered in the literature looking into the research for this talk, and I think it's a really important thing to investigate in the future. This idea of teacher agency for social justice. So it's been studied by Pantich, who is somewhere in the UK and does research not on language teaching or teachers, but teachers in general. And it's been also picked up by Graham Crooks in several of his recent publications with students and former students. So in one of the studies with Graham Crooks and 4 of his students, they look at the 4 first authors' development of an awareness and of justice, social justice, and a becoming political, they call it. And they concluded that there are 3 favorable elements that support this. One is biographical. They saw that there were personal values that were very attuned to social justice, and that they were related to the crossing of socioeconomic or geographical boundaries by those teachers in their lives, in their former lives, in their present lives. They also saw that all 4 teachers took inspiration from reading a book, looking at a resource on their own time, on their own initiative, so it wasn't formalized through some kind of a curriculum. And many of them discovered Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed, and that caused a big impression in them. And just discovering and beginning to imagine that there is an alternative, developing a very strong imagination for hope. And the third element was special moments of intensification that had the potential to make them, help them forge collaborative relationships, because then they felt that they had more capacity for transformation of their teaching, transformation of the lives of their students. So these 3 favorable elements were shared by all 4 first authors in their development of a sense of social justice, a political becoming as teachers. And so they proposed that maybe these 3 things should be present. Biography does seem very important for teacher agency for social justice. And here's an example that I found striking. This teacher says, "My background is not a pleasant background. As a child, I was from a working class home, a lot of alcohol abuse, physical abuse, and then ended being cared for. So my own background isn't your standard middle class. So when a child arrives and they're filthy, dirty, and they don't have their PE kits, and they haven't done their homework, I can sort of understand that. And I could never give a child trouble for that, because I remember what it was like. And I'm very aware that schools can be quite middle-class, judgmental places. Not school and education, they're paradoxical too, right? They have goals for good in society. They can also do a lot of harm in society. And being an inside member of a marginalized community, when a teacher is an inside member, can also create favorable conditions to push their teaching towards agency and acts of social justice. So here's Jackson, a queer English language teacher studied by Leal and Crooks. Very strikingly, she planned coming out to her students, who were mostly Asian international students, in a community college in the US. So she planned it to the point of designing a PowerPoint to come out officially in class. But she was teaching a civil rights English for academic purposes class. So it did go well. The institutional framework was there already given to her to be able to do this, right? And so here's how she explained her decision. On one hand, I was sick and tired, as a queer person standing right in front of them, of hearing students say, I've never met an LGBT person, because they were studying LGBTQ issues, right? And Jackson says, every time they said it, it would piss me off. I'm like, you're talking to a gay person right now. On the other hand, what a teachable moment, despite my personal frustration. So that made her decide to go ahead, plan it, do it carefully, do it in the right context, but do it to awaken the students' awareness of, a lot of people that you may know are actually queer, and they're not the other, they are the people you interact with every day. But I don't think we should rely on biographical favorable conditions alone. We need to be creating education opportunities for teachers to develop this sensitivity and this determination to act for social justice. So where is the place for social justice in language teacher cognition for all teachers, not just for those who develop it naturally? And can the research help find it? So in conclusion, and I think I'm doing great with time, I love it. I always want to do short talks, and I almost never manage. But I know that shorter is better, always. In conclusion, what do we need from language teachers? Good language teachers, who are they? Well, they are inspiring, they're empathic, they are explorers of classroom puzzles, they're agentive, they regulate their emotion labor, they're enactors of emergent acts of moral imagination. They engage with the pain of their students. They educate for conviviality, creative meaning-making, relationships with the other. An ethical vision is also necessary to scrutinize whether what can be learned is worth knowing and for whose benefit. So we have the ethical vision. We have a lot that we know already about language teacher cognition. Can we add teacher agency for social justice to the research agenda? Thank you very much. And I should say I have 3 wonderful respondents. I'm humbled that you're here to respond.